with police state, how does that have to do with what the, I know we're talking about DC, but what does it talk, how does that resonate with all the geopolitical conflicts that we're currently fighting in the Ukraine or the Middle East?
Well, it connects with that only in this way. You had this Hamas attack, and look, there's no excuse for not knowing about an attack of that magnitude in advance. So I don't know what
You're talking
happened
about
with
October
Israeli.
7th. You're saying they should have known, that you believe they had inside information?
I'm saying that not only should the Israelis have known, but U.S. intelligence, which is supposed to be the best in the world, and with modern technology, to have an attack, think of it, cell phone geolocation, satellite surveillance, inside people, the idea that you could launch an assault of that scale and have no idea, and have Jake Sullivan say basically a few days before the Middle East is as quiet as it's been in decades. I mean, this is a massive failure of U.S. intelligence. And here's my point. Why did it occur? Because U.S. intelligence, the CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, are focused on grandmothers who went into the Capitol on January 6th. They're looking in the wrong place, and as a result, we gave the U.S. government all this surveillance power after 9/11 to keep an eye on Islamic radicals at home and abroad, and I'm saying that they've dropped the ball on that critical mission.
No, I agree with you. I mean, the Patriot Act, now they have warrantless search and seizure of our phone and email records. I mean, when we signed that, we just basically signed away our freedom, or our autonomy at least. So, Dinesh, my producer is a huge Dinesh D'Souza stan. He went to Princeton. He's very smart, and he actually wrote about you in his thesis. So he wants to talk about that. Yes, and I'm not even kidding. We joke around on the show. We're going to probably joke around here in a minute, but I'm serious. He literally wrote a 153-page thesis, and your book, I believe, was like the core thing that he wrote about.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah, I'm secretly a nerd, even though this is a comedy show.
You're not a nerd. He just graduated from gay conversion therapy, so if you can congratulate him on that, Dinesh. He's one of our best.
So I wrote my senior thesis on Islamic terrorism. I focused on actually Masab Hassan Youssef. I focused on terrorists that converted to Christianity, so he was kind of a test case. But I read your book, Enemy of the State, to kind of get more context. And something that stuck out to me, that it was a little bit of a contrarian take back then, is you talked about women in Saudi Arabia, and you actually said they have a lot more rights than people realize. You talked about how they're domineering at the home, and you also talked about, I think you said, that they didn't want to drive because they viewed driving as a chore. So I guess, can you speak on that? And I know they can drive now, but can you expand on that?
Well, I was talking about the fact that Islamic society is a kind of extreme version, or maybe italicized version, of traditional cultures all over the world. And in traditional cultures, very often there's hard labor in the rural areas expected of men and women. And one of the marks of becoming middle class, in other words, is basically women don't have to do that kind of back-breaking labor anymore. They now have the kind of benefit of domesticity. They're able to now raise children at home. And so the traditional division of labor between male and female isn't some patriarchal invention to oppress women. It is a stage in the movement from agrarian peasant cultures to middle-class cultures that have modest prosperity, where people can actually afford to support a family with only one person working. Now, this was true not only in places like India, which of course is a traditional culture, which has Muslims but is predominantly a Hindu society, but even even communist societies after communism, one of the sort of forms of liberation of post-communism was women no longer were forced to work.
Wow.
And also one other thing, when I met with my thesis advisor, I referred to you as a scholar, and he's like, "Please stop referring to Dinesh D'Souza as a scholar."
Why not? Why? He's on the show. He is a scholar. Why would you say that to our guest, Jimmy?
Compared to your professor, who's probably written like one book to get tenure, recycles the same garbage.
Jimmy,
look, I mean, I don't know if I'm a scholar or I'm not. I started my career in scholarly environments. The American Enterprise Institute, the Hoover Institution at Stanford. I mean, I've taught at Harvard. I was invited by Derek Bok, the former president. Today, I try to aim my work at a much wider audience. I try to speak a less academic language because I make films that are aimed at reaching millions of people. So it's not important to me to be seen as a scholar, but very often I find that these academic sort of guys, he's not a scholar. I'm like, all right, well, why don't we have a debate on the topic of your specialty and see whether you know more or I know more?
Okay, Jimmy.